Liam Sinclair stood in the soft glow of the afternoon sun, his paintbrush dancing across the canvas. The vibrant colors swirled together, creating a scene that was both haunting and beautiful, a reflection of his inner turmoil. He loved art, it was his escape, a way to express emotions that often felt too heavy to carry. But today, his heart was not in the strokes of his brush. Today, it was all about Evelyn. Evelyn Sinclair, his older sister, had always been the adventurous one. With her fiery spirit and unyielding determination, she had a way of lighting up any room she entered. But lately, there was a shadow hanging over her, a worry that seemed to consume her thoughts. As Liam set down his brush and wiped his hands on a rag, he could see it etched on her face. "Liam," she said softly, her voice tinged with hesitation as she stepped into the room. "Can we talk?" He turned to face her, concern flooding his chest. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Evelyn took a deep breath, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "It's about Dante Moretti." The name sent a jolt through Liam. Dante was not just any man, he was the prince of the underworld, a figure shrouded in mystery and danger. The stories surrounding him were both alluring and terrifying. Liam had heard whispers of Dante's charm and power, but he also knew the darkness that came with it. "I know you have feelings for him," Liam said carefully, gauging her reaction. Evelyn nodded, biting her lip as if trying to keep her emotions in check. "I do, but it's complicated. Our family, our history with the underworld isn't exactly straightforward." Liam felt a pang of protectiveness for his sister. Their family had faced enough turmoil without adding more complications. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently. "I've been thinking about how I can't pursue him without putting us all at risk," Evelyn admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "If I get involved with Dante and something goes wrong, I can't let that happen to you." Liam's heart raced as an idea began to form in his mind. It was reckless, but perhaps it was the only way to protect Evelyn and their family from potential harm. What if I married him instead?" The words tumbled out before he could fully process them. Evelyn's eyes widened in shock. "What? Liam, you can't be serious." "I am serious," he insisted, feeling a strange sense of determination wash over him. "If I marry Dante, it might keep you safe from any repercussions that could arise from your feelings for him." "But what about you?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "You'd be marrying someone you barely know. Someone dangerous." "I'll figure it out," he replied firmly. "I'd rather take that risk than watch you suffer because of your feelings for him." Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, searching his eyes for any sign of doubt. But all she found was resolve, a brother willing to sacrifice his own happiness for hers. "Liam," she started but faltered. "Please," he urged gently. "Let me do this for you." After what felt like an eternity, Evelyn finally nodded, tears brimming in her eyes but a small smile breaking through the sadness. "You're incredible," she said softly. As they embraced, Liam felt a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through him. He knew this decision would change everything, not just for him but for their entire family. Later that evening, as darkness fell over Chicago and the city lights began to twinkle like stars in the sky, Liam found himself standing before a mirror in their shared apartment. He adjusted his collar nervously, practicing what he would say when he met Dante for the first time as his fiancée. The thought made him anxious. Marrying someone from the underworld was not just a commitment, it was stepping into a world filled with shadows and secrets. But if it meant protecting Evelyn and keeping their family safe, then he would do it. With one last deep breath to steady himself, Liam left their apartment and headed into the night, a night that would mark the beginning of an extraordinary journey filled with love, danger, and unexpected twists. The air was thick with anticipation as I approached the venue for the wedding. The underworld was a realm unlike any I had ever imagined, opulent yet foreboding, filled with shadows that whispered secrets and promises. The entrance to the ceremony was adorned with dark velvet drapes and flickering candlelight, casting an ethereal glow that danced across the faces of the guests gathered inside. As I stepped through the grand archway, my heart raced. I had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, yet nothing could truly prepare me for the reality of marrying Dante Moretti, the prince of the underworld. The sound of soft music enveloped me, a haunting melody that echoed through the lavish hall. I could see Dante standing at the altar, his back turned to me, clad in an elegant black suit that accentuated his tall, athletic frame. He was strikingly handsome, with dark hair that fell just above his piercing blue eyes. There was an air of confidence about him that both intrigued and intimidated me. As I walked down the aisle, I felt every gaze upon me, some curious, others envious. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my nerves. When Dante turned to face me, time seemed to stand still. His expression was unreadable, a mask of composure that concealed whatever thoughts were swirling beneath the surface. I could feel my pulse quicken as our eyes locked. There was something electric in that moment, a connection that transcended words. The officiant began the ceremony, and I struggled to focus on the words being spoken. My mind raced with thoughts of what this marriage would mean for both of us. Would I be able to break through Dante's emotional barriers? Would he ever truly let me in? The questions lingered like a shadow at the back of my mind. As we exchanged vows, I felt a strange mix of excitement and trepidation. "I promise to stand by you," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Dante's gaze softened slightly as he spoke his own vows, words filled with a sense of duty and obligation rather than passion. The moment our hands touched during the ring exchange sent a jolt through me. It was both thrilling and terrifying. I could feel the weight of our union settling over us like a heavy cloak. With each word spoken, I realized that this was not just a marriage, it was an alliance between two worlds, the light and the dark. Once we were pronounced husband and husband, applause erupted around us, but it felt distant, muffled by my racing heart. As we stepped down from the altar together, Dante leaned in closer. "Are you ready for this?" he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. "I think so." The reception that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a lavish feast filled with rich foods and decadent desserts, all served beneath a canopy of stars created by shimmering lights overhead. Guests mingled in elegant attire, their laughter echoing through the hall as they celebrated our union. But amidst the festivities, I felt an undeniable sense of isolation creeping in. Dante was quickly swept away by his duties as prince. He mingled with powerful figures from both the underworld and high society while I stood on the sidelines, watching him charm everyone around him. As the evening wore on, I found myself seeking solace in a quieter corner of the venue. The music faded into a soft hum as I leaned against a marble pillar, trying to catch my breath. Just then, Marcus appeared beside me, a familiar face amidst all this grandeur. "Hey," he said with a grin. "How's it going?" "It's overwhelming," I admitted, rubbing my temples in an attempt to ease my anxiety. "Don't worry," he reassured me with a wink. "You'll get used to it. Just remember that you're not alone in this." I appreciated his words more than he knew. It was comforting to have someone who understood how foreign this world felt to me. Suddenly, Dante's voice cut through the crowd as he approached us. "Liam," he said smoothly, his eyes glinting with mischief. "I need you for a moment." I looked at Marcus before following Dante away from the party into a dimly lit corridor lined with intricate artwork depicting scenes from Underworld lore. The atmosphere shifted, it felt more intimate here away from prying eyes. "What do you need?" I asked cautiously. Dante paused for a moment before speaking, his expression serious now. "I wanted to check on you. This must be quite different from what you're used to." "It is," I replied honestly. "But I'm managing." "Good," he said softly, stepping closer until there was barely any space between us. "You should know that this isn't just about our marriage, it's about navigating two worlds together." His words resonated deeply within me, a promise wrapped in uncertainty but also hope. As we stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity, something shifted between us, a spark igniting in the depths of our connection. But before anything could unfold further, we were interrupted by Clara Voss's sharp voice cutting through the moment like glass shattering against stone. "Dante, there you are," she exclaimed with feigned enthusiasm as she approached us with her usual confidence. Dante stepped back slightly as if her presence disrupted whatever fragile bond we had begun to forge in that quiet corridor. "Clara," he greeted coolly. "I hope you're not keeping your new husband all to yourself," she said with a playful smirk directed at me before turning her attention back to Dante. "We have guests who want to meet him." I felt an icy chill creep into my chest as Clara's gaze lingered on me for just a moment too long, her eyes glinting with something unspoken. "Of course," Dante replied smoothly but didn't make any move toward her yet. As they walked away together toward the reception hall filled with laughter and music again, I couldn't shake off the feeling that Clara was more than just an acquaintance. She seemed determined to stake her claim over Dante's attention, and perhaps mine too. With uncertainty swirling around me like fog on a winter night, I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what lay ahead, a journey into uncharted territory where love and danger intertwined like shadows dancing in candlelight. The days following the wedding blurred together, each one a mix of excitement and isolation. The underworld was a captivating place, filled with opulence and danger, yet I often felt like a ghost wandering through its lavish halls. Dante was frequently absent, caught up in his royal duties, leaving me to navigate this new world alone. I spent my mornings exploring the sprawling estate that served as our home, a grand mansion adorned with dark wood and intricate tapestries that told stories of ancient battles and forbidden romances. Despite its beauty, the house felt empty without Dante's presence. I often found myself retreating to the garden, where the moonlight illuminated the roses that flourished in the shadows. It was a place of solace, where I could lose myself in thought. One evening, as twilight descended upon the garden, I decided to paint. I set up my easel beneath a gnarled tree, its branches twisting like the secrets that surrounded me. As I dipped my brush into vibrant colors, I poured my emotions onto the canvas, my longing for connection, my fears about Dante's absence, and the uncertainty that loomed over our marriage. Just as I was getting lost in my art, I heard footsteps approaching. I turned to see Marcus walking toward me with a wide grin on his face. "There you are. I've been looking for you." "Hey," I greeted him, relief washing over me. I needed some time away from everything. He nodded knowingly and leaned against the tree. "I get it. This place can be overwhelming." "It's beautiful," I admitted, glancing around at the blooming flowers and the soft glow of lanterns hanging from branches. "But it feels so lonely sometimes." Marcus's expression softened. "You're adjusting to a whole new life. It's okay to feel out of place." "Have you seen Dante?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Not since the wedding," he replied with a shrug. "He's been buried in meetings and negotiations. You know how it is." A knot formed in my stomach at his words. I had hoped that after our wedding, things would change, that we would grow closer and navigate this new life together. But with every passing day, it felt like we were drifting further apart. "Do you think he'll ever let me in?" I asked Marcus, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think he wants to," Marcus said thoughtfully. "But he has his own demons to face, things he hasn't shared with anyone." I sighed, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "It's hard to help someone who won't let you in." "Give him time," Marcus encouraged. "You're both figuring this out together." Just then, a rustle in the bushes caught our attention. A figure emerged from the shadows, Dante himself, looking more regal than ever in a tailored suit that accentuated his strong frame. His expression was serious as he approached us. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said coolly, though there was an edge of concern in his voice. "Not at all," Marcus replied with a grin before giving me a knowing look and stepping back to give us space. Dante's gaze fell on me, and for a moment, everything else faded away. "What are you working on?" he asked, nodding toward my canvas. "It's just an attempt to capture this place," I said hesitantly. "It's beautiful but complicated." He stepped closer to examine my work, his eyes scanning the strokes of color that represented my feelings more than any words could convey. "You have talent," he said quietly. "Thank you," I replied, feeling warmth spread through me at his compliment. For a brief moment, we stood in silence, both captivated by the painting and by each other. But then reality crashed back in as Dante shifted uncomfortably. "I need to talk to you about something," he said suddenly, his tone serious again. My heart raced at his words. "What is it?" "There are challenges ahead, political tensions between our world and others that we need to address," he explained, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I've been pulled into meetings with powerful figures who want to exploit our alliance. Is there anything I can do?" I asked eagerly, wanting to help him navigate this tumultuous landscape. Dante shook his head slightly. "This is something you don't need to be involved in right now." His dismissal stung more than I expected it would. "But we're married now. Shouldn't we face these challenges together?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I saw vulnerability flicker behind his stoic facade. "It's complicated," he said softly. Before I could respond, Clara appeared again from behind a nearby hedge with her usual flair for drama. "Dante, there you are. We need you back inside, they're waiting for you. Her voice was laced with urgency as she approached us. Dante turned toward her reluctantly but glanced back at me before leaving. The connection we had felt moments ago slipped away like sand through my fingers. As Clara led him away into the depths of the mansion once more, frustration bubbled within me again, a mixture of anger and sadness at being left behind yet again while she seemed to take center stage in his life. Marcus returned beside me after they disappeared from view. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted honestly as I stared at my unfinished painting, the colors blending together like my emotions, confused and chaotic. "He'll come around," Marcus reassured me again but didn't push further. As darkness enveloped the garden around us and stars began to twinkle overhead like distant promises of hope, I realized that patience would be key in this new life, a lesson that felt both daunting and necessary. With each passing day in this world filled with shadows and secrets, I would have to find my own light, one stroke at a time. The days turned into weeks, and the weight of my new life pressed heavily on my shoulders. I had settled into a routine, but the loneliness lingered like a shadow, always just out of reach. Dante remained elusive, consumed by his responsibilities as the prince of the underworld. Each evening, I would wait for him, hoping for a moment of connection, but he often returned late, his mind still entangled in the affairs of his realm. One afternoon, as I wandered through the mansion's library, a vast room filled with ancient tomes and dark wood shelves, I stumbled upon a section that caught my eye. It was a collection of books about the history of the underworld, filled with tales of power struggles, betrayals, and forbidden love. I pulled one from the shelf and began to read, captivated by the stories that unfolded before me. As I turned the pages, I learned about Dante's family, the Morettis, who had ruled over the underworld for generations. Their legacy was steeped in blood and loyalty, but it was also riddled with tragedy. The more I read, the more I understood the burdens Dante carried. He wasn't just a prince, he was a man shaped by expectations and haunted by his past. Lost in thought, I didn't hear Dante enter until he cleared his throat softly. Startled, I looked up to find him standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low. "I was just reading," I replied, holding up the book as if it were a shield against my vulnerability. He stepped closer, glancing at the cover before meeting my gaze. "You shouldn't delve too deeply into our history. It can be dangerous." "Dangerous?" I echoed, my curiosity piqued. "Why?" "Because it reveals too much about your family." Dante's jaw tightened slightly as he crossed his arms. "Because it can lead to misunderstandings, misconceptions about who we are and what we stand for." I felt a surge of frustration at his evasiveness. "But understanding your world is important to me. If we're going to make this marriage work, I need to know what I'm getting into." He sighed heavily and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that revealed his inner turmoil. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then tell me," I urged, stepping closer to him. "Share your burdens with me instead of shutting me out." For a moment, silence enveloped us like a thick fog. Dante's eyes searched mine as if weighing his options. Finally, he relented and gestured for me to sit on one of the plush chairs in the library. "I'll tell you about my family," he began slowly, his voice heavy with emotion. "But you must promise not to judge us too harshly." I nodded eagerly, feeling a sense of hope blossom within me. "My father was a ruthless leader," he continued, leaning forward as if sharing a secret meant only for me. "He believed power was everything, he would do anything to maintain control over our territory. My mother, she was different. She wanted peace but paid the price for her ideals." "What happened?" I asked softly. Dante hesitated before answering. "She was betrayed by someone she trusted, someone close to our family, and it cost her life." His voice cracked slightly as he spoke, pain flickered across his features. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, feeling an ache in my chest for the boy he once was. "After her death," he continued, "my father became even more tyrannical. He raised me to be just like him, to rule with an iron fist, but I've always struggled with that expectation." He paused again, searching for words. "I don't want to be like him." "Then don't be," I said firmly. "You have the power to choose your own path." Dante looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, really seeing me, and in that moment, something shifted between us. The walls he had built around himself began to crack. "I want to trust you," he admitted quietly. But it's hard when everything around us is so unstable. Let me in, I pleaded gently. I'm here for you, just like you're here for me. He took a deep breath and finally nodded slowly. All right. As we sat together in that dimly lit library surrounded by stories of love and loss, Dante began to share more about his life, the struggles of being heir to a throne steeped in darkness and how he longed for something different. With each word spoken between us, our connection deepened. It felt like we were weaving an invisible thread that bound our hearts together. But just as things began to feel hopeful again, Clara appeared at the doorway once more, her presence slicing through our moment like a knife. Dante, she called out with feigned cheerfulness that felt anything but genuine. There you are. We need you at the meeting, they're waiting. Dante's expression shifted instantly from openness to duty as he stood up abruptly. I have to go, he said quickly. Wait, I called after him desperately as he turned away from me. But Clara had already stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm possessively as she flashed me an insincere smile before leading him away. I watched them disappear down the hall, my heart sinking into despair once more. Just when we had begun to break through barriers that had kept us apart, Clara's interruption shattered our fragile moment. Feeling frustrated and defeated, I returned my attention to the book on my lap, the words blurring together as tears threatened to spill over my cheeks. In this world filled with shadows and secrets, it seemed that every time I took a step forward with Dante, something pulled us back into darkness, a reminder that love could be both beautiful and painfully complicated. The atmosphere in the mansion had shifted, a tension hanging in the air like an impending storm. I could feel it as I moved through the halls, where whispers of political unrest and power struggles echoed off the walls. Dante had been increasingly consumed by his duties, and I could sense that something was brewing beneath the surface, a dangerous undercurrent that threatened to pull us all under. One evening, as I prepared for yet another gala hosted by Dante, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie. The opulence of the event felt overwhelming, but I knew it was important for Dante to maintain appearances. He needed to show strength and unity among the influential figures of the underworld. Still, my heart raced with anxiety as I thought about Clara's growing influence and her relentless pursuit of Dante. As I entered the grand ballroom, adorned with shimmering chandeliers and lavish decorations, I was immediately struck by the contrast between the beauty surrounding me and the turmoil within. Guests mingled in elegant attire, laughter and music filling the air, but my heart felt heavy. Dante was already at the center of attention, effortlessly charming those around him. Clara stood close by, her laughter ringing out like a siren's call, drawing everyone's gaze. I felt a pang of jealousy as she leaned in closer to him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. It was a gesture that seemed innocent enough, but to me, it felt like a claim, an assertion of her presence in his life. Liam, Marcus called out as he approached me with a drink in hand. You look sharp. Ready to mingle. I forced a smile, grateful for his distraction. I suppose so. Just trying to keep up with everything. Marcus glanced over at Dante and Clara, his expression shifting to one of concern. You know she's been trying to get close to him since the wedding. I can see that, I replied tersely, my grip tightening around my glass. Don't let her get to you, he said reassuringly. Dante chose you. Did he? I asked bitterly. It feels like every time we take a step forward, she pulls us back into chaos. Then don't let her, Marcus urged. You have more power than you realize. Taking a deep breath, I nodded. Perhaps it was time to confront this situation head-on instead of allowing Clara's presence to loom over me like a dark cloud. As the evening progressed, I watched Dante navigate conversations with ease, his charisma undeniable as he captivated those around him. But every time Clara laughed too loudly or touched his arm too intimately, my heart sank further into despair. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I made my way through the crowd toward Dante. As I approached him, Clara noticed me and flashed a smirk before stepping back slightly. Liam, Dante exclaimed with genuine warmth when he saw me. I'm glad you could join us. Of course, I replied, forcing a smile despite the knot in my stomach. Clara interjected smoothly, we were just discussing some upcoming business arrangements. Her tone dripped with condescension as she looked at me. Business arrangements, I echoed, trying to keep my voice steady. Yes, Dante said, his brow furrowing slightly as if sensing my discomfort. It's important for us to maintain alliances. Is it? I challenged gently, feeling emboldened by Marcus's words. Or is it just another way for Clara to assert her influence? Dante's gaze flickered between us as tension crackled in the air. Clara is an ally, he said carefully. An ally who seems more interested in you than your business, I shot back before I could stop myself. Clara laughed lightly, but there was an edge to it that made my skin crawl. Oh Liam, don't be jealous. We're all friends here. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she leaned closer to Dante again. I could feel my frustration boiling over. This was not just about jealousy, it was about loyalty and trust. Dante, I said firmly, turning my full attention to him. I need you to understand that this isn't just some game for me. He opened his mouth to respond when suddenly a loud crash echoed through the ballroom. A chandelier swayed precariously above us as gasps erupted from guests nearby. The atmosphere shifted instantly from festive celebration to alarmed chaos. What was that? Someone shouted as people began to move toward the exits in confusion. Dante's expression hardened as he scanned the room for threats while Clara clutched his arm tightly, her earlier bravado replaced by fear. We need to find out what happened, he said decisively before turning toward me with intensity in his eyes. Stay close. As we moved through the crowd together, Dante leading the way, I felt an unexpected surge of adrenaline coursing through me. The moment had shifted. Whatever danger lurked outside had brought us together in a way nothing else had managed to do. We reached the entrance where several guests were gathered around a broken window, glass shards littering the floor like fallen stars. Outside stood a group of men dressed in dark clothing, their faces obscured by hoods but their intentions clear. Their presence sent shivers down my spine. What did they want? I whispered urgently to Dante as we pushed our way closer. They're from one of our rival factions, he replied grimly. They're testing our strength. Before I could process his words fully, one of the men stepped forward, a tall figure with an air of authority that commanded attention even amidst chaos. Prince Moretti, he called out mockingly over the din of frightened voices. Your reign is weak. We're here to remind you who truly holds power in this city. The crowd murmured uneasily as tension mounted, fear rippled through those gathered like an electric current. Dante stepped forward defiantly. You're making a mistake coming here, he warned firmly. The man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the hall like thunder before gesturing toward Clara and me with disdainful amusement. And who are these two? Your little pets. I felt rage boiling within me at his words. This wasn't just about power, it was about respect and dignity for everyone involved. They are not pets, Dante replied coldly, standing tall beside me as if drawing strength from our connection. They are family. The man's expression faltered slightly at Dante's declaration but quickly returned to arrogance as he sneered again before turning back toward his companions. We'll see how long your family stands by you when we come for what is rightfully ours. With that ominous threat hanging in the air like smoke from extinguished flames, they turned and disappeared into the night, leaving behind shattered glass and uncertainty swirling around us like fog on a cold morning. As silence fell over the ballroom once more, fear still lingering, I turned toward Dante who looked both fierce and vulnerable at once, a man caught between worlds yet determined not to falter under pressure. Are you all right? I asked softly despite everything that had just happened. He nodded slowly but there was something deeper behind his gaze, a realization that perhaps our love would be tested far beyond what either of us had anticipated. In that moment surrounded by chaos and uncertainty, I understood that we were no longer just navigating our relationship. We were stepping into a battle that would demand everything from us both. Trusting each other would be our greatest weapon against whatever darkness lay ahead. The aftermath of the confrontation with the rival faction left the mansion buzzing with tension. The gala that had promised to be a night of celebration had turned into a stark reminder of the dangers lurking just beyond our walls. I could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me, but amidst the chaos, something had shifted between Dante and me, a bond forged in the fire of adversity. The next morning, I awoke to find the mansion eerily quiet. The usual sounds of staff bustling about were replaced by an unsettling stillness. I dressed quickly, my mind racing with thoughts of what had transpired. I needed to talk to Dante, to understand how we could face this threat together. As I made my way through the halls, I noticed the heavy curtains drawn tight against the sunlight, as if the house itself was mourning the events of last night. I finally found Dante in his study, poring over documents spread across his desk. maps, reports, and notes detailing alliances and betrayals. He looked up as I entered, his expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Liam," he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "I'm glad you're here. I wanted to check on you," I replied, stepping closer. "What's our next move?" Dante leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "We need to strengthen our defenses and solidify our alliances. The attack last night was a warning, one we can't afford to ignore." I nodded, feeling a sense of urgency building within me. "What can I do to help?" He regarded me for a moment, surprise flickering in his eyes before he nodded slowly. "I appreciate that you want to be involved. But this world is dangerous, I don't want you to get hurt." "I'm not afraid," I insisted, my resolve hardening. "If we're going to face this together, then I need to be part of it." Dante studied me for a long moment before finally relenting. "All right. But promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," I said firmly. We spent the next few hours strategizing and discussing potential allies within the Underworld, families who might stand with us against our rivals. As we worked side by side, I felt a growing sense of purpose. This was no longer just about navigating our relationship, it was about fighting for our future. Later that afternoon, we gathered in a large meeting room with Marcus and a few trusted advisors from Dante's inner circle. The atmosphere was tense as discussions turned serious, everyone understood the stakes involved. "We need to send a message," Dante said firmly as he addressed the group. "We cannot show weakness." One of his advisors, a tall man named Victor with sharp features and an air of authority, nodded in agreement. "We should consider a show of force, a demonstration that we will not be intimidated." "What do you have in mind?" I asked cautiously. Victor leaned forward, his voice low but intense. "A display at the upcoming gathering of families, a chance to remind everyone where we stand." Dante's gaze flickered toward me before he spoke again. "And what if it backfires? We risk escalating tensions further. Or we could unite our allies behind us," Victor countered passionately. "This is an opportunity to show strength." I watched as they debated back and forth, the tension palpable in the air, but beneath it all, I saw something else, a shared determination among them all to protect what mattered most. Finally, Dante turned to me again. "What do you think?" I hesitated for just a moment before speaking up. "I think we need to show that we're not afraid, together. If we stand united in front of everyone else, it will send a powerful message." Dante's expression softened slightly at my words, he seemed to appreciate my input even amidst such serious discussions. After much deliberation, it was decided that we would host an event, a gathering where families could come together and witness our resolve firsthand. It would be both a celebration and a declaration of unity against any threats that loomed over us. As plans took shape over the next few days, I felt excitement bubbling within me, a sense that we were finally taking control of our destiny instead of letting fear dictate our actions. But amidst this newfound determination lay an undercurrent of anxiety. Clara's presence still lingered like an unwelcome shadow at every gathering and meeting. I couldn't shake off the feeling that she would do anything to undermine us. On the day of the event, I stood in front of the mirror once more, this time adjusting my suit with purpose rather than trepidation. The grand hall was adorned with elegant decorations, flowers arranged meticulously and candles flickering softly against dark wood accents. As guests began to arrive, families from all corners of the underworld, I felt both exhilarated and nervous. This was our chance to show strength but also vulnerability. Dante stood beside me as we greeted each guest, his presence grounding me amidst swirling emotions. But as Clara entered with her usual flair, my heart sank once more. She moved through the crowd like smoke, elusive yet captivating. "Dante," she called out sweetly as she approached us, her smile radiant but her eyes calculating. "Clara," he replied coolly, maintaining his composure despite her proximity. "I hope you don't mind if I mingle. After all, this is such an important gathering." Her tone dripped with insincerity as she glanced at me before returning her attention fully to Dante. "Of course," he said curtly before turning back toward me, his eyes betraying frustration at her interruption. As more guests filled the hall and conversations flowed around us like music, I felt a surge of determination wash over me. This was about more than just us, it was about standing tall against those who sought to tear us apart. When it came time for Dante to address everyone gathered in front of him, The room fell silent as he stepped onto an elevated platform adorned with flowers and candles flickering softly around him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady yet powerful as he addressed the crowd before him. "We stand united against any threats that may come our way because together we are stronger." Cheers erupted from those gathered, an affirmation echoing throughout the hall, but as Clara stood among them with her calculating smile still intact, I knew that this battle was far from over. As Dante continued speaking about loyalty and unity among families within their realm, I felt hope blossoming within me. Perhaps this was just what we needed, a way forward into uncharted territory where love met strength head-on. And as he finished his speech with a call for solidarity among all present, I realized that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together side by side, united by love and determination against whatever darkness threatened our world.